I was standing at my kitchen counter, Earl Grey steeping in my favorite porcelain cup, the one James gave me on our 20th anniversary, when I saw Felix's phone light up on the marble surface. He'd left it behind in his usual rush, grabbing his laptop bag and flying out the door for some urgent client meeting. My youngest had always been scattered that way, brilliant with code, but hopeless with daily logistics. The notification banner glowed against the black screen. Family group, no grandma. My hand froze halfway to the teacup. Family group, without me. I felt something cold settle in my chest, not quite panic, not quite hurt. Something sharper, more alert. Why would my children have a group chat that deliberately excluded me? I picked up the phone. Felix never bothered with passcodes, always said he had nothing to hide. Sweet, trusting Felix. I'd always appreciated that openness. The chat opened immediately. 23 pages of messages. I started scrolling, and with each swipe upward, another piece of my heart cracked open. "Who's picking up the old lady tomorrow?" Nathaniel had written. My firstborn, the boy I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through colic, put through Princeton. Old lady. As if I were some decrepit burden instead of his 58-year-old mother who still ran 5 kilometers 3 times a week. Scarlett's response came next, her words dripping with contempt I'd never heard in person. "Not me. Last time she talked for 2 hours about her goddamn business. I can't take it anymore." I had to sit down. The kitchen chair felt hard beneath me, too solid for how unmoored I suddenly felt. I kept reading, unable to stop, like pressing on a bruise to confirm it still hurts. Sophia, my only daughter. She's still planning to donate everything to charity. We need to act fast. Felix had liked these messages. Just a thumbs-up reaction, nothing written, but he'd acknowledged them. He'd seen his siblings plotting and said nothing, done nothing. My baby, who I'd rocked through nightmares, who'd cried in my arms just 8 months ago after his last breakup, had watched them scheme and simply liked their messages. I scrolled further back, hands trembling now, tea forgotten and cooling. The conversation had been going on for weeks, months actually. They discussed my schedule, my habits, my appointments. Nathaniel dominated the thread, his messages clinical and calculated. If we can get her to sign the power of attorney Thursday, we can start transferring the investments before she notices. Power of attorney. Transferring investments. My investments. The ones I'd built through 30 years of grueling consulting work, early mornings and late nights, sacrificing time with them, ironically enough, to provide them with everything they'd ever needed. Mom still goes to that book club every Wednesday, Sophia had written 2 weeks ago. She'll be gone from 2 to 5. That's when we should go through her home office. They'd been in my home, in my private office, going through my papers while I discussed Victorian literature with women I'd known for 15 years, drinking coffee and eating petit fours, completely oblivious that my own children were violating my privacy and planning my financial destruction. I felt sick, genuinely nauseous. I set the phone down and pressed my palms flat against the cool marble, trying to steady myself. Breathe, Constance. Breathe and think. Don't react. Not yet. But the messages kept burning in my mind. Maybe we should look into commitment options, Nathaniel had suggested 5 days ago. If she resists the POA, we might need professional help to handle her. Commitment options. Professional help to handle me. They were discussing having me institutionalized, declared incompetent, put away somewhere so they could access my money freely without my interference. Scarlett's response. There are nice facilities in Connecticut. My college roommate's mom is in one. They have yoga classes and everything. They'd researched facilities with yoga classes, as if that made it acceptable to lock away their healthy, sound-minded mother for the crime of having money they wanted. I picked up the phone again, scrolling through more messages with methodical precision now, the initial shock hardening into something colder, more focused. I needed to see all of it, every detail of their betrayal. She mentioned Thomas again yesterday, Sophia wrote. Thomas Brennan, my financial advisor. A happily married 62-year-old grandfather of 4 who'd managed my portfolio for 8 years. I think she's getting too close to him. We need to create distance there. Agreed, Nathaniel responded. Maybe suggest he's trying to take advantage of her? Plant some doubt? They were going to try to isolate me from my financial advisor. from the professionals who helped me maintain my independence. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. Total control. They wanted me dependent, confused, cut off from everyone who might question their authority over me. I found a message from 3 weeks ago that made my blood run cold. Dad would want us to protect the family money. He worked hard, too. It's not just hers. How dare Nathaniel invoke his father? James would be horrified, absolutely horrified. My husband spent his entire career designing beautiful, ethical buildings that made communities better. He'd never schemed, never manipulated, never put money above integrity. To use his memory to justify this grotesque conspiracy was desecration. There were practical details scattered throughout: my bank account numbers, discussion of my investment portfolio worth, estimates of my real estate holdings. They'd itemized my life like I was already dead, dividing up assets as if I were nothing more than a balance sheet to be liquidated. The Boston apartment alone is worth at least $2 million, Nathaniel had calculated. Plus the beach house, the stock portfolio, the bonds. We're looking at roughly $4.2 million total, minus whatever she's already pledged to that stupid immigrant scholarship thing. That stupid immigrant scholarship thing. The foundation I'd been planning in James's memory to help kids like I'd been. Daughter of Italian immigrants who arrived with nothing, worked as a waitress through business school, built something from nothing through sheer determination. That dream they dismissed as stupid. I needed to document this, all of it. I opened my email on Felix's phone and started forwarding the entire conversation thread to myself. 23 pages of conspiracy, betrayal, and contempt. Each screenshot I sent was another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin of whatever relationship I'd thought we had. When I finished, I sent a message to Lorenzo Vitale, my attorney for 15 years. Emergency. Need to see you tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't call, don't text back. They're monitoring me. Because they probably were. I pulled up Felix's other apps quickly, checking. Sure enough, he had a tracking app showing my location shared with the family group. They knew where I was at all times. For how long? How long had they been watching me like this? I deleted my email to Lorenzo from Felix's sent folder, cleared the search history, and placed the phone exactly where I'd found it, angle and everything. My hands were steadier now. The initial shock had burned through, leaving behind something harder, clearer. I picked up my tea, stone cold. I poured it down the sink and made fresh, going through the familiar motions while my mind raced. Tomorrow was Tuesday. The family dinner Nathaniel had insisted on was Thursday. This Thursday, when they planned to present me with papers to sign. Just simple paperwork to make things easier for you, Mom, he'd said on the phone last week, his voice dripping with false concern. I'd thought it was sweet that he wanted family dinner, that he was finally making an effort after being so distant since his father's funeral 3 years ago. I'd been looking forward to it, actually. Pathetic. Felix returned 40 minutes later, breathless and apologetic. Mom, I'm so sorry. Did you see my phone? I completely spaced. I handed it to him, my face carefully arranged in maternal affection. Right here, sweetheart. How was your meeting? Disaster. Client wants everything redesigned. He kissed my cheek, already distracted, scrolling through his notifications. I've got to run. Dinner Sunday? Of course, darling. I'll make your favorite. He left, and I stood in my quiet kitchen, in the apartment I'd bought with my own money, surrounded by furniture I'd chosen, art I'd collected, a life I'd built, and felt utterly alone. But alone wasn't the same as helpless. They'd made a critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. 58 years old, and they thought I was some fragile, declining old woman who could be manipulated and controlled. They forgot who raised them. They forgot who built a multi-million-dollar consulting firm from nothing. They forgot that I didn't survive 3 decades in corporate warfare by being naive or passive. I pulled out my own phone and looked at my calendar. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., Lorenzo's office. I'd known him since before Nathaniel was born. He'd handled my business sale, my estate planning, James's affairs after the funeral. He was more than my attorney. He was one of the few people I trusted completely. And I was going to need that trust, because this wasn't just about protecting my money. This was about something deeper, something that cut to the core of who I was. My children, the 3 people I'd loved more than my own life, had looked at me and seen nothing but an obstacle to wealth. An inconvenient old woman in the way of their inheritance. They'd called me old lady. They'd discussed committing me. They'd violated my privacy, tracked my location, planned to isolate me from my advisors and friends. They'd done all of this while smiling to my face, accepting my gifts, eating at my table. I walked to the window, looking out at Boston's evening skyline. The city lights were just beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Nathaniel was probably having drinks with Scarlett, laughing about how Thursday would go. Sophia was likely home alone, convincing herself this was necessary. Felix was debugging code, maybe feeling a twinge of guilt, but not enough to actually do anything about it. And I was here, in possession of knowledge they didn't know I had. Strategic advantage. The first rule of warfare, whether corporate or personal, information is power. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they were amateurs. And I'd been a professional for 30 years. I finished my tea, rinsed the cup, and placed it in the dishwasher with steady hands. Then I went to my office and began making notes. Every detail I could remember from those messages. Every date, every plan, every cruel word. By the time I finished, it was past midnight, but I had a complete record. Thursday dinner. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did I exactly. But whatever Lorenzo and I planned tomorrow, it would be decisive. It would be final. And it would ensure that my children learned a lesson about consequences that I'd apparently failed to teach them growing up. I'd given them everything. Education, opportunities, love, support. I'd sacrificed my time, my energy, sometimes my own ambitions to make sure they had the best possible start in life. And they'd repaid me with contempt and conspiracy. But I wasn't their victim. Not anymore. Tomorrow, the fight back began. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. Old lady. That stupid scholarship thing. Commitment options. Words that rewrote 34 years of motherhood into something unrecognizable. At 7:30 the next morning, I was already dressed in my charcoal Armani suit, the one I'd worn to close my biggest deal back in 2015. Armor. I needed armor for what was coming. Lorenzo's office was downtown. A 15-minute drive I'd made countless times over the years. This time felt different. This time, I was going there to dismantle my own family. His receptionist barely had time to announce me before Lorenzo appeared in the doorway, concern etched across his distinguished features. He'd aged well, my attorney. Silver hair, sharp eyes behind reading glasses, the kind of steady presence that made clients feel safe. We'd been through my business sale together, James's death, numerous legal matters over 15 years. He knew me. Really knew me. Constance. He ushered me into his private office, closing the door firmly. Your message scared me. What's happened? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd sent myself. Read these. All of them. I watched his face as he scrolled through 23 pages of my children's conspiracy. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to something harder, colder. When he finally looked up, his jaw was tight. Constance, this is attempted financial fraud and elder abuse, legal elder abuse. He set my phone down carefully, as if it contained something explosive, which, in a way, it did. You're aware of what we're looking at here? Elder abuse. The words tasted bitter. I'm 58, Lorenzo. I run 5 kilometers 3 times a week. I manage a complex investment portfolio. I'm on 2 nonprofit boards. But legally, what are they attempting? Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Depending on how far they've already gone, if they've actually accessed accounts or forged documents, we could be looking at criminal charges. He leaned back in his chair, thinking. But before we discuss legal options, I need to understand what you want. This is your family. What did I want? I'd asked myself that question all night. Did I want my children arrested? Publicly shamed? Or did I want something else? Justice, yes, but justice that didn't destroy them completely. They were still my children, even after everything. I want them to face consequences, I said slowly. Real consequences. But I also want to protect myself and my assets. They can't know that I know. Not yet. If I confront them now, they'll scramble, cover their tracks, maybe even accelerate their plans. Lorenzo nodded, already making notes. Agreed. We need to act strategically. First, we modify your estate documents immediately. Today, right now, actually. Then we put protections in place. Flag your accounts, alert your financial institutions, create a paper trail that shows you're of sound mind and acting of your own free will. For the next 3 hours, we worked. New will, new trust documents, new power of attorney designations. Lorenzo as my agent, not my children. The new will was brutal in its clarity. 80% of my estate would fund the James Ashcroft Educational Foundation, providing scholarships for children of immigrants. My children would split the remaining 20%, roughly $280,000 each, under strict conditions and only after my death. Nothing while I lived. If they contested, they'd be cut off entirely. The foundation was always something you and James discussed, Lorenzo said as we finalized the documents. He'd be proud of this. James. God, I missed him. My architect husband with his gentle hands and ethical core. He'd designed buildings that made communities better, never compromising his principles for profit. When he got sick 3 years ago, lung cancer that spread too fast, I'd nursed him through every horrible stage. The children had visited, of course, but their visits grew shorter, less frequent. Nathaniel always had work emergencies. Sophia was struggling with her marriage. Felix tried, bless him, but watching his father die terrified him. I'd been the strong one. I'd held James's hand through chemotherapy, made decisions about treatment, sat with him during those final weeks when morphine was the only mercy left. And after he died, I'd organized the funeral, managed the estate, supported my grieving children financially and emotionally. I'd been a rock, because that's what mothers do. But something had shifted after the funeral. Nathaniel started asking questions about my estate planning. Not in a caring way, in an inventory way. How much was the apartment worth? What about the beach house in Maine? Had I updated my will? Scarlett began making comments about my spending habits, as if my charity donations were personal affronts to her future inheritance. Sophia pulled away into her own marital disaster. Her husband turned out to be controlling, psychologically abusive in subtle ways that took her years to recognize. When she finally filed for divorce 8 months ago, I'd been there completely. Paid for her lawyers, $35,000. Let her stay in my apartment for 4 months while she got back on her feet. Listened to hours of crying, rage, grief. I'd thought we'd grown closer through that experience. Apparently, I was wrong. Felix had remained my constant. Or so I'd believed. Sweet Felix, who called me twice a week, who brought me coffee on Sunday mornings, who seemed genuinely interested in my life. Learning he'd seen those messages and just liked them felt like a particular kind of betrayal. Not active malice like Nathaniel's, but passive complicity. Silence in the face of wrong. Constance? Lorenzo's voice pulled me back. You were somewhere else. Just thinking about how I got here. How I didn't see this coming. Because you loved them. Trust isn't blindness. It's appropriate faith in people who should be trustworthy. They failed you, not the other way around. He slid the final document across his desk. Sign here and here. This is the flag we're putting on your brokerage accounts. Any attempt to access or modify them triggers immediate notification to me and to you. I signed. My hand was steady. I'd signed countless documents in my career. Contracts worth millions, agreements that shaped companies' futures. This felt more significant than any of them. Now, Lorenzo said, sitting back. The dinner Thursday. You're still going? Absolutely. They think I'm showing up as a naive mother ready to sign their papers. I'll act exactly that way. Agreeable, a little confused maybe, grateful for their concern. I need to see what they're actually planning to present me with. Take photos of any documents they show you. Don't sign anything, obviously. If they pressure you, tell them you need me to review everything first. That's completely reasonable and shouldn't raise suspicions. He paused. But Constance, be prepared for this to get ugly. When people are desperate about money, they can become dangerous. You think my children would physically harm me? I think desperate people do desperate things. Nathaniel has significant debts. I did some preliminary research this morning. He's leveraged to the breaking point. Scarlett's lifestyle is unsustainable on his income. They need your money not just for greed, but for survival. That makes them unpredictable. The investigation had revealed Nathaniel's financial situation. $340,000 in debt from failed investments, Credit cards maxed out, mortgage underwater. My successful firstborn was drowning, and instead of asking his mother for help honestly, he'd chosen manipulation and conspiracy. Lorenzo walked me out, his hand briefly on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, stronger than they realize. Use that." I drove home through morning traffic, my mind processing everything. The new legal protections felt like walls going up around my life. Necessary walls, protective walls, but walls nonetheless, built against my own children. Back in my apartment, I moved through rooms James and I had furnished together. The cream sofa we'd bought after selling my company, finally able to afford luxury. The Steinway piano Sophia had learned on. I'd kept it even though she never played anymore. Nathaniel's high school trophies still displayed on the bookshelf because I'd been proud, so proud of everything he'd accomplished. Evidence of love everywhere. Evidence of a family I'd built with intention and care, and evidence of my own blindness, apparently. My phone buzzed. "Nathaniel, looking forward to Thursday, Mom. 7 p.m. We have so much to talk about." I typed back, "Me too, sweetheart. I'll bring dessert," playing the role. The unsuspecting mother who trusted her children, who would show up with homemade tiramisu and a grateful smile, ready to make things easier by signing over her autonomy. They'd crafted their trap carefully. They just didn't know I'd already escaped it. I spent the rest of Tuesday and all of Wednesday acting perfectly normal. Book club on Wednesday afternoon. Victorian literature and coffee, just like they'd noted in their surveillance of my schedule. I wondered if they were watching my location, seeing the tracking dot at the library, feeling satisfied that their old lady was predictable and controllable. Thursday morning, I made tiramisu, James's mother's recipe, the one I'd perfected over 30 years. My hands moved automatically through the familiar steps. Espresso-soaked ladyfingers, mascarpone cream, cocoa dust. Cooking calmed me, always had. There was order in recipes, logic in measurements. Unlike human hearts, which measured nothing and followed no recipe at all. At 6:30, I dressed carefully. Not the power suits I'd worn to Lorenzo's office, but soft cashmere in dove gray, pearl earrings, minimal makeup. I looked like what they wanted to see. An elegant older woman, refined, but perhaps a touch fragile. Someone who might need help managing her complicated financial life. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. On the surface, I looked the same. But something fundamental had shifted. The mother who'd raised those children with unconditional love had died when I read those messages. Someone harder had taken her place. Someone who understood that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was enabling. It was weakness. And I was done being weak. I picked up the tiramisu, grabbed my purse with my phone recording app ready, and headed for my car. Nathaniel's house in the suburbs was a 40-minute drive. 40 minutes to prepare myself for the performance of my lifetime. Because tonight, I would sit at their table, eat their food, smile at their lies, and let them believe they were winning. And tomorrow, the real game would begin. Nathaniel's house sat in one of those manicured suburban developments where every lawn looked identical and every facade screamed aspirational wealth. I'd given him $80,000 for the down payment 6 years ago, a wedding gift when he married Scarlett. Looking at it now, knowing he was $340,000 in debt, I wondered how much of this perfect exterior was mortgage delusion. Scarlett answered the door, her blonde hair freshly styled, makeup flawless, one hand resting on her 4-month baby bump. "Constance, come in, come in." She kissed both my cheeks. European-style affectation she'd adopted after one trip to Paris. "You look lovely. Is that new cashmere?" "Thank you, dear. You're glowing." The lies came easily. She did look good, actually. Pregnancy agreeing with her physically even as her character rotted from within. "I brought tiramisu." "You didn't have to." But her eyes lit up. Scarlett loved my tiramisu, had requested it for every family gathering since she'd married into our family. I wondered if she'd taste differently now, knowing what I knew. Probably not. Sociopaths rarely experienced appropriate guilt. The dining room table was set with their wedding china. Wedgwood, another gift from me. $12,000 worth of porcelain they used maybe twice a year. Nathaniel emerged from the kitchen carrying wine, his smile broad and false. "Mom, perfect timing." He kissed my cheek, and I forced myself not to flinch. This was the man who'd written commitment options about his own mother. Where's Sophia? And Felix? They'll be here soon. Sophia's running late from work, and Felix texted he's 15 minutes out. Nathaniel poured wine. Expensive Bordeaux I didn't recognize. More debt, probably. Sit. We're so glad you could make it. I sat in the chair he indicated, positioning my purse carefully on my lap. Inside, my phone was already recording. Lorenzo had coached me. Document everything. Assume nothing. Trust no one. Sophia arrived 10 minutes later, looking exhausted. She'd lost weight since the divorce, her cheekbones too prominent, dark circles under her eyes, poorly concealed with makeup. She hugged me longer than necessary, and I felt her trembling slightly. Guilt, fear, or just exhaustion from being a pawn in her brother's scheme. Hi, Mom. Sorry I'm late. Client crisis. Don't apologize, sweetheart. I'm just happy we're all together. Felix came last, breathless and apologetic as always. He avoided my eyes when he kissed my cheek. Good. He should feel ashamed. When this was over, Felix might be salvageable. The jury was still out on the others. Dinner was elaborate. Filet mignon, roasted vegetables, potatoes dauphinoise. Scarlett had clearly ordered from that expensive catering company downtown. More money they didn't have spent to impress me. Or maybe to soften me up. Look how well we're doing, Mom. Look how we don't really need your money. Except they did. Desperately. The conversation stayed superficial through the first course. Nathaniel's work projects, carefully edited to sound successful. Scarlett's pregnancy symptoms, described in excruciating detail. Sophia's new apartment, which I'd already helped her furnish. Felix's latest coding breakthrough, the only genuine topic of the evening. I played my role perfectly. Interested, proud, maternal. I asked questions, made encouraging noises, complimented Scarlett's hosting. I was the mother they wanted me to be, loving, supportive, and crucially unsuspecting. Dessert came, my tiramisu served with coffee. Scarlett raved about it. Constance, you have to teach me this recipe. I want to make it for the baby shower. Of course, dear. It was James's mother's recipe. It should stay in the family. The irony wasn't lost on me. Family recipes for a family that was cannibalizing itself. Nathaniel cleared his throat, the signal I'd been waiting for. Mom, actually, we asked you here tonight because we've been worried about you. Here it comes. I set down my fork, arranged my face into mild concern. Worried? Why? Well, you've been alone for 3 years now since Dad died. That's a long time to manage everything by yourself. He was using his corporate voice, the one he probably used in board meetings. Smooth, reasonable, utterly insincere. We've been thinking about how we can help make things easier for you. That's very thoughtful. I looked around the table. Sophia wouldn't meet my eyes. Felix was staring at his coffee. Only Nathaniel and Scarlett maintained eye contact, united in their deception. But I'm managing fine. Lorenzo helps with the legal matters. Thomas handles my investments. I'm not sure what else I'd need help with. That's exactly the point, Mom. Scarlett leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet. You're managing so much alone. All those people to coordinate, all those decisions. What if you could simplify? What if you had family handling things instead of strangers? Lorenzo and Thomas aren't strangers. I've known them for years. But they're not family. Nathaniel pulled a leather folder from the sideboard behind him. My pulse quickened. Here were the papers, the trap they'd set. We've put together some documents that would allow us to help you more directly. Nothing major, just power of attorney so we can handle financial transactions if you're traveling or busy. It would streamline everything. He slid the folder across the table. I opened it slowly, as if I didn't already know exactly what I'd find. Power of attorney forms, comprehensive and irrevocable. If I signed these, they'd have complete access to everything: bank accounts, investments, property deeds, medical decisions. I'd be effectively signing away my autonomy. This is very detailed. I flipped through the pages, taking my time. My phone was still recording. I needed them to explain everything, to dig their own grave with words. I'm not sure I understand all the legal language. That's okay, Mom. Nathaniel's patience was clearly forced. It's standard stuff. Basically, it just means we can help you pay bills, move money around, handle property matters, make life simpler for you. But I'd need to show this to Lorenzo first. He reviews all my legal documents. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Nathaniel's smile tightened. Why would you need Lorenzo? This is family business. Don't you trust us? The question hung in the air, heavy with irony only I could fully appreciate. Did I trust them? These people who'd called me old lady and researched commitment facilities? Of course I trust you. The lie came smoothly. But Lorenzo has always reviewed my documents. It's just sensible practice. He could probably explain the legal terminology better than I can understand it on my own. Scarlett's voice took on an edge. Constance, Lorenzo charges $350 an hour. Why waste money on him when we're just trying to help you? We're not trying to steal from you. The audacity, the sheer audacity of that statement when I knew exactly what they were trying to do. I kept my face neutral, channeling every ounce of self-control I'd developed in 30 years of business negotiations. I appreciate your concern about costs, but this is important. I need to be sure I understand what I'm signing. Mom, come on. Nathaniel's frustration was showing now. You're overthinking this. It's really simple. Sign here and here, he pointed to signature lines, and we can start helping you immediately. Didn't you just say last month how overwhelming the financial stuff was getting? I'd never said that. He was creating false memories, gaslighting me, laying groundwork to claim I was confused, incompetent. My anger was a cold, hard thing now, settling in my chest like ice. I don't recall saying that, actually. You did, Mom. Remember? At brunch, after church? Sophia spoke up for the first time, her voice weak. She was a terrible liar, my daughter. Always had been. You mentioned feeling tired of managing everything. They were tag-teaming me now, building a narrative. This was coordinated, rehearsed. How many times had they practiced this conversation? Maybe I did. I closed the folder gently. But I'd still like Lorenzo to review these. It's just good practice. I can take them to him tomorrow, and if he says they're fine, I'll sign next week. Is that acceptable? The silence was deafening. Nathaniel and Scarlett exchanged looks. Felix shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's hands were shaking around her coffee cup. The thing is, Mom, Nathaniel said slowly, we were hoping to get this handled tonight. We have some time-sensitive matters that would really benefit from having this authority in place. What time-sensitive matters? Another exchange of looks. They hadn't prepared for this question. Amateur mistake. In negotiations, you always prepared for every question, every objection. Just some investment opportunities, Nathaniel said vaguely. Things that need to move quickly. Market timing. Investment opportunities with my money. How generous of him to think of my portfolio. I appreciate that, but I'm comfortable with my current investment strategy. Thomas and I reviewed everything last month. We're well positioned. Thomas is too conservative. Scarlett's frustration was bleeding through her polished exterior now. You could be earning so much more. Nathaniel has connections, opportunities Thomas would never find. Nathaniel's connections? I kept my voice genuinely curious, not accusatory. Let them talk. Let them reveal themselves. Like what? Crypto, he said eagerly, sensing an opening. Tech startups, real estate developments. High-yield opportunities that traditional advisors are too scared to pursue. High-yield opportunities, the same ones that had probably landed him $340,000 in debt. The same risky investments that had destroyed his finances were now what he wanted to do with mine. Those sound quite risky. Risk equals reward, Mom. You didn't build your business by playing it safe. Actually, I did. Calculated risks, yes. But I never gambled. And I certainly never invested money I couldn't afford to lose. I stood up, picking up my purse. I think I should go. Thank you for dinner. It was lovely. Mom, wait. Nathaniel stood too, his hand on my arm. Not aggressive, but firm. Please don't leave like this. We're just trying to help. I know you think you are, but I need time to think. And I need Lorenzo to review these documents. That's not negotiable. I pulled my arm free gently, but decisively. I'll call you next week after I've had the papers reviewed. Constance, please. Scarlett's voice had lost all its sweetness. Think about your grandchild. Don't you want to make sure your family is taken care of? Using the baby as emotional blackmail. Of course. I turned to face her fully. I think about my grandchild constantly. I think about what kind of family he or she will be born into. what values they'll learn, what kind of people their parents are. The words hung heavy with double meaning. Scarlett's face flushed. She heard the judgment, even if she didn't understand its full basis. Sophia started crying quietly. Felix looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Only Nathaniel held his ground, his jaw clenched, eyes hard. "I'll walk you out," he said, his tone carefully controlled. We walked to the door in silence. At the threshold, he spoke quietly. "Just for me. Mom, I don't think you're seeing this clearly. We're worried about you. You're alone, you're getting older, and managing a fortune by yourself isn't smart. We're trying to protect you. From what, exactly? From people who might take advantage of you. From making mistakes with your money. From—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "From declining judgment that comes with age." There it was, the veiled suggestion that I was becoming incompetent, the groundwork for their commitment plans. "Nathaniel, I'm 58, not 88. My judgment is fine. Better than fine, actually." I met his eyes directly. "But I appreciate your concern. I'll be in touch." I drove away without looking back, but I watched in the rearview mirror as he stood on the doorstep, phone already out, probably texting the family group, probably discussing how the evening had gone wrong, how I'd been difficult, how they needed a new strategy. Let them strategize. They had no idea I was 10 steps ahead. At home, I immediately sent the audio recording to Lorenzo with a text. They presented the POA documents exactly as we discussed, pressured for immediate signature, became hostile when I refused. "Meeting tomorrow?" His response came within minutes. 9 a.m. my office. This is worse than I thought. They're desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. Lorenzo's warning echoed in my mind as I prepared for bed. But I wasn't scared. I was angry, yes. Hurt, deeply. But not scared. Fear required uncertainty, and I had perfect clarity now. My children had made their choice. They'd chosen money over integrity, greed over love, manipulation over honesty. They'd looked at their mother and seen nothing but an obstacle to wealth, a problem to be managed, an old lady to be controlled. Now they'd face the consequences. Not just legal consequences, though those were coming, but something deeper. The loss of the mother who'd loved them unconditionally. That mother was gone. They'd killed her with their contempt and conspiracy. What remained was someone harder, colder, and far more dangerous than they'd anticipated. Someone who'd spent 30 years outmaneuvering corporate sharks and building an empire from nothing. Someone who understood power, strategy, and the precise application of force. They wanted war? Fine. But wars required generals, and I'd been commanding troops since before they were born. They were about to learn exactly who Constance Ashcroft was when you backed her into a corner. Not an old lady, not a confused widow, not a vulnerable target. A fighter. And I intended to win. Friday morning, Lorenzo's office felt different. Or maybe I felt different. Sharper, more focused, like a weapon finally understanding its purpose. He had documents spread across his conference table, coffee steaming in expensive china cups neither of us had touched. "I listened to the recording 3 times last night," he said without preamble. "Constance, they're not just planning fraud, they're building a case for incompetency. The language Nathaniel used, declining judgment, managing a loan, time-sensitive matters, that's textbook groundwork for a competency challenge. Which means, if you'd signed those papers and then resisted their control, they'd have used the POA to declare you mentally unfit, lock you into some facility, claim you're a danger to yourself, liquidate your assets while you're institutionalized and unable to fight back." He pushed a folder toward me. I did more digging. Nathaniel consulted with Patterson and Wells 2 weeks ago. They specialize in elder law and incompetency proceedings. Patterson and Wells. I knew that firm. They'd handled a case 5 years ago where adult children had successfully committed their 70-year-old mother against her will, claiming dementia she didn't have. By the time the truth came out, they'd drained her accounts. She died in that facility 6 months later, penniless and broken. My hands clenched. They were actually going to do it. They were setting up every piece. The POA gives them authority. The consultation with Patterson establishes intent. All they needed was your signature and a cooperative doctor. Lorenzo's voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the anger underneath. "I've known you 15 years. You're one of the sharpest people I've ever met, and they were going to lock you away like you were nothing. I stood, walking to the window overlooking downtown Boston. The city stretched out below, full of people living their normal Friday morning lives. None of them knew that in this office, a mother was planning the systematic dismantling of her children's conspiracy. What are my options? Legally, we have enough for criminal charges: attempted fraud, conspiracy, potentially elder abuse depending on how the DA interprets the evidence. We could go to the police today. He paused. But that destroys them publicly. Nathaniel could face prison time. Scarlett, too, as a co-conspirator. Sophia might avoid charges if we position her as a reluctant participant, but her career would be damaged. Is that what you want? Was it? I'd asked myself this question 100 times since Tuesday. Did I want my children arrested? Publicly shamed? Their lives destroyed? I want them to understand consequences, I said slowly. I want them to feel what they tried to do to me. But I don't want to be the mother who sent her children to prison. Then we go nuclear a different way. Lorenzo pulled out a new set of documents. Family meeting, tomorrow. Here in my office, official and recorded. You confront them with everything. The messages, the POA scheme, the Patterson consultation. I present the new will, the new trust, the legal protections we've put in place. They learn that not only have they failed, but their betrayal has cost them dearly. No criminal charges, but absolute financial consequences. They'll deny everything. Let them. We have evidence. Felix's phone with the group chat. The POA documents they tried to pressure you into signing. The recording from Thursday night. Patterson's consultation logs, which I've subpoenaed. They can deny all they want, but facts don't lie. I returned to my chair, mind racing through scenarios. A confrontation here, controlled environment, witnesses, everything documented. No screaming, no violence, just cold presentation of facts and consequences. Professional, final. What about Felix? What about him? He came to see me last night, after I left Nathaniel's. I hadn't told Lorenzo yet. Felix had appeared at my door at 10 p.m., pale and shaking. He confessed everything. Said Nathaniel manipulated him, told him I was planning to remarry some fortune hunter and they needed to protect James's legacy. All lies, obviously. Felix never actively participated in the planning. He just didn't stop it. Lorenzo considered this. That changes his position. If he's willing to testify about Nathaniel's manipulation, about the lies he was fed, that actually strengthens our case, shows a pattern of deceit. He's willing, he's terrified, but he's willing. Felix had cried in my kitchen, 28 years old, and sobbing like he was 8 again. He'd apologized over and over, said he'd been a coward, said he'd make it right. I'd held him and felt my heart crack open again, because Felix reminded me that not everything was lost. One of my children still had a conscience. Then here's what we do. Family meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. You, me, Nathaniel, Scarlett, Sophia, and Felix. I'll frame it as a state planning discussion, something they'll eagerly attend. We present everything at once. Evidence, consequences, new will. They'll have a choice: accept the terms gracefully and maintain minimal relationship with you, or contest and face criminal prosecution. Lorenzo's eyes were hard. No negotiations. No second chances. They tried to institutionalize you, Constance. They don't get mercy. What about the baby? The question hurt to ask. Scarlett's due in 5 months. That's my grandchild. The child is innocent. The terms can include supervised visitation rights with grandchild, contingent on parents' behavior. But you set the boundaries, not them. Your terms, your timeline, your conditions. I nodded slowly. A grandchild I'd never hold freely, never babysit alone, never trust my own son and daughter-in-law around. They'd stolen that from me too, the joy of being a grandmother without fear. Set up the meeting. Tell them it's urgent estate planning. Make sure they all come. Lorenzo reached across the table, his hand covering mine briefly. This is going to hurt. Even with all they've done, confronting them will hurt. I know, but letting them win would hurt more. Letting them think they could treat me like this without consequences would hurt more. And living the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when they'd make their next move, that would hurt most of all. He squeezed my hand once, then released it. You're one of the strongest people I know. Don't forget that tomorrow, when they try to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. I left his office with a strange sense of calm. The waiting was almost over. No more pretending, no more acting, no more careful documentation. Tomorrow, everything would be laid bare. The truth would be spoken. Justice, imperfect and painful, would be served. At home, I called Felix. "There's a meeting tomorrow at Lorenzo's office, 2 p.m. Be there and be ready to tell the truth." "I will, Mom. I promise. I'm so sorry." "I know you are, sweetheart. That's why you still have a chance." Then I sent a text to the family group, the one that included me, the normal one, where we pretended to be a functional family. "Important family meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., Lorenzo's office. Estate planning matters. Everyone must attend, non-negotiable." Nathaniel responded first, finally ready to discuss things properly? If he only knew. "Yes," I typed back. "Everything will be discussed properly. Scarlett." "Can't wait, Constance. So glad you're being reasonable." "Sophia." "I'll be there, Mom." Felix didn't respond in the group. He didn't need to. We'd already had the only conversation that mattered. I spent the rest of Friday in my apartment, surrounded by 34 years of motherhood. Photos, report cards, art projects I'd saved, Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts, and misspelled love. Evidence of who they'd been before greed corrupted them. Evidence of who I'd been before their betrayal broke me. Tomorrow, we'd all become different people. The transformation would be brutal, but necessary. You can't heal a wound without first cutting away the infection. And my family was infected to its core. Time for surgery. Saturday afternoon sunlight poured through Lorenzo's conference room windows, creating harsh shadows that seemed appropriate for what was coming. I arrived 30 minutes early, needing time to steel myself. Lorenzo had arranged the room strategically. Long table, chairs on one side for my children, chairs on the other for Lorenzo and me. Formal, almost courtroom-like. "How are you feeling?" Lorenzo asked, setting up a recording device in plain sight on the table. "Like I'm about to perform surgery on my own heart." I sat down, smoothing my black Chanel suit. More armor. I dressed like I was going to war because I was, but necessary surgery. "Remember, you control this meeting. If it gets too heated, we stop. If they become threatening, we call security. You have all the power here, even if they don't realize it yet." At exactly 2 p.m., they started arriving. Sophia first, looking nervous, clutching her purse like a shield. Felix right behind her, pale but determined. Then Nathaniel and Scarlett together, both dressed professionally, putting on a show of unity and respectability. Nathaniel carried a briefcase, probably his own documents, his own plans for today's meeting. They sat across from us, their confusion evident. This wasn't the casual estate planning discussion they'd expected. The formal setup, the recording device, Lorenzo's stern presence, all of it radiated authority and consequence. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady. "I know you're wondering why Lorenzo and I called this meeting. We'll get to that. But first, I want to say that what happens in this room today will fundamentally change our family. There's no going back from this conversation." Nathaniel frowned. "Mom, you're being dramatic. We're just here to discuss your estate planning, right? Make sure everything's organized properly?" "No, Nathaniel. We're here to discuss your conspiracy to defraud me, isolate me, and potentially have me committed to a facility so you could steal my assets." The silence was absolute. Sophia's face drained of color. Felix stared at his hands. Scarlett's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Only Nathaniel maintained composure, though I saw his jaw clench. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots. "Let me refresh your memory. Family group, no grandma. Ring any bells?" I watched understanding dawn across their faces. Horror, panic, calculation, all of it playing out in real time. Nathaniel reached for his phone instinctively, probably to check if the group still existed, if the messages were still there. "I have copies of everything," I said calmly. 23 pages of your conspiracy. Every message where you called me old lady. Every discussion about commitment options. Every plan to manipulate me, track me, isolate me from my advisors. Every single word of contempt you wrote about your mother while I loved you completely. "Mom, let me explain," Sophia started, tears already streaming. "No, you'll listen first, then you can speak. I nodded to Lorenzo, who slid folders across the table to each of them. These contain printed copies of your messages, timeline of your conspiracy, and documentation of legal consultations you made regarding incompetency proceedings. Nathaniel opened his folder, scanning quickly. I watched his face harden as he realized the extent of what we knew. Scarlett's hands trembled as she read. Sophia couldn't even open hers, just sat there crying. Felix didn't touch his. He already knew what it contained. You tracked my location, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You went through my home office while I was at book club. You researched facilities to commit me to. Nathaniel, you consulted with Patterson and Wells about incompetency proceedings 2 weeks ago. You planned this meticulously, thinking I was too old, too trusting, too naive to notice. We were trying to protect you. Nathaniel's voice rose, defensive. You're alone, you're vulnerable, and people take advantage of vulnerable, wealthy women all the time. We were trying to help. By calling me old lady? By discussing which of you had to suffer through picking me up? By planning to have me institutionalized? My anger was ice cold now, precise as a scalpel. That's not protection, Nathaniel. That's imprisonment. That's theft. You're twisting everything. Scarlett found her voice sharp with desperation. Those messages were taken out of context. We were worried about you, trying to figure out how to approach sensitive topics. Stop. Lorenzo's voice cut through her excuses. I've been a lawyer for 27 years. I know what conspiracy looks like. I know what elder abuse looks like. And this, he tapped the folders, is textbook. You researched commitment facilities. You prepared power of attorney documents designed to give you total control. You consulted with lawyers specializing in competency challenges. You tracked her movements. These aren't the actions of concerned children. These are the actions of criminals. How dare you? Nathaniel stood up, aggressive. You're the one manipulating her. You've turned her against her own family because you want her money for yourself. Sit down. My voice cracked like a whip. Sit down now, or this meeting ends and Lorenzo calls the police with our evidence. Nathaniel sat, vibrating with fury. Scarlett put a hand on his arm, trying to calm him, but her eyes were calculating. She was already working through scenarios, figuring angles. Some people never stopped scheming. Mom, please. Sophia's voice broke through her sobs. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was scared and lost after the divorce, and Nathaniel said we needed to protect the family money, that you were making bad decisions, that you might be getting confused. I'm not confused, Sophia. I've never been confused. Your brother lied to you, manipulated you, used your vulnerability to make you complicit in his scheme. But you still made a choice. You chose to betray me. I know, and I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. You can start by telling the truth. Felix, same for you. I want Nathaniel and Scarlett to hear from your own mouths what really happened. Felix finally looked up, his eyes red. Nathaniel told me Mom was planning to remarry someone he'd researched, some guy he said was clearly a gold digger. He said we needed to protect Dad's legacy, make sure Mom didn't get scammed. He said the group chat was just for coordinating how to approach the topic carefully. I didn't know about the commitment plans. I swear I didn't know about that. But you knew they were calling me old lady. You knew they were tracking me. You knew about the power of attorney scheme. I knew some of it, not all of it. I thought, his voice cracked, I thought it was just about protecting you. I was stupid and cowardly, and I should have talked to you directly. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I nodded slowly, then turned to Sophia. And you? Nathaniel said you were donating everything to charity out of grief, that you weren't thinking clearly, that we'd all end up with nothing. He said Dad would want us to preserve the family wealth. I was broke after the divorce, scared about my future, and I believed him. I helped them track your schedule. I told them about your meetings with Thomas. I'm guilty of everything you think I am. She was sobbing openly now. But I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to feel secure again. Security built on betraying your mother isn't security at all. It's sand. I looked at Nathaniel and Scarlett, the architects of this disaster. Your turn. Explain yourselves. Nathaniel's jaw worked, but Scarlett spoke first, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. You're sitting on over $4 million while your children struggle. Nathaniel works 80 hours a week and we're drowning in debt. Sophia lost everything in her divorce. Felix can barely afford his apartment. And you're planning to give it all away to strangers? To people who aren't even family? My money is mine to do with as I please. It's Dad's money too. He worked for it. And you're going to disrespect his memory by giving it to people who have nothing to do with us? She was standing now, hands on her pregnant belly like it was a shield. We're your family. We deserve that inheritance. You deserve nothing. My voice was absolute zero. Inheritance is a gift, not a right, and you've forfeited any claim to my generosity through your actions. Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. If you cut us out, we'll fight. We'll challenge the will, claim you were manipulated by Lorenzo, get doctors to testify about your declining mental state. We'll tie up your assets in probate for years. Try it. Lorenzo slid another set of documents across the table. New will, executed Tuesday morning before you attempted to present the POA papers Thursday night. Witnessed by 3 independent parties, including a doctor who performed a comprehensive cognitive assessment. Constance scored in the 98th percentile for her age group. She's demonstrably of sound mind and acting of her own free will. Any challenge will fail and trigger the contest clause, cutting you out entirely. I watched Nathaniel read, watched his face cycle through disbelief to rage to something close to despair. 80% to a foundation? We get $280,000 each? That's it? That's more than you deserve. It's more than most people see in a lifetime. But yes, that's it. The James Ashcroft Educational Foundation will provide scholarships for children of immigrants, people like my parents, who came here with nothing and built something through hard work and integrity. Values you've clearly forgotten. This is because of those messages? Scarlett's voice was shrill now. Because we vented in a private chat. Everyone complains about their parents. It doesn't mean anything. It meant something to me. And the messages were just the beginning. The power of attorney scheme, the tracking, the Patterson consultation, Thursday night's pressure tactics, all of it revealed who you really are. I stood, needing to be on my feet for what came next. But here's what happens now. You have a choice. You can accept these terms gracefully and maintain a limited relationship with me. Supervised visits with the grandchild when he or she arrives. Holiday dinners with boundaries. Civil, distant, but not completely severed. Or, Nathaniel's voice was pure venom. Or you contest, and Lorenzo takes our evidence to the district attorney. Attempted fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. Criminal charges that will destroy your careers, your reputations, possibly land you in prison. Scarlett, you're 4 months pregnant. Do you really want to give birth while facing felony charges? The blood drained from her face. Nathaniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her own survival instinct kicking in. You'd do that to us? Nathaniel asked. Your own children? You were willing to institutionalize me, to lock me away and steal everything I'd built. Don't talk to me about family loyalty when you destroyed it first. My voice finally broke, just slightly, the emotion I'd been holding back cracking through. I loved you more than my own life. I sacrificed for you, provided for you, supported every dream you ever had, and you repaid me with contempt and conspiracy. So yes, I'd do it, to protect myself from you. Silence settled over the conference room like ash. Sophia was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Felix looked broken, staring at his older brother with something like hatred. Scarlett was doing calculations, probably already planning how to spin this, how to survive it. And Nathaniel sat there, his empire of lies crumbling around him, finally understanding that his mother wasn't the weak target he'd imagined. What do you want from us? He finally asked, his voice hollow. Acceptance. You accept the will terms. You stop tracking me, scheming about me, plotting against me. You rebuild your own lives without expecting my money to save you. If you can do that, if you can show genuine change over time, maybe we salvage something. But the family you knew, the mother you took for granted, that's gone. You killed her. And if we accept, Sophia whispered, then we move forward carefully. Therapy, all of you. Family counseling if any of you want to try rebuilding trust. Boundaries that I set and you respect. It won't be what it was. It can't be. But it might be something. I accept, Sophia said immediately. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, boundaries, anything. I just want a chance to make this right. I accept too, Felix added quietly. I'll prove I deserve your trust again. All eyes turned to Nathaniel and Scarlett, the architects, the true believers in their own justifications. Scarlett looked at her husband, then at her belly, then at Lorenzo's impassive face. Survival won. We accept, she said. Nathaniel said nothing for a long moment, then finally nodded once. Sharp, angry, but acquiescence nonetheless. He'd lost, and he knew it. Lorenzo will draw up formal agreements. You'll sign them, and then we'll see if any of you can actually change. I picked up my purse, suddenly exhausted. This meeting is over. I walked out without looking back, Lorenzo right behind me. Behind us, I heard Sophia's continued crying, Felix's quiet voice trying to comfort her, and Scarlett's sharp whisper to Nathaniel. I told you we should have moved faster. Even now, even after everything, still scheming. But it didn't matter anymore. They'd lost. I'd won. And the victory tasted exactly as bitter as I'd known it would. 3 weeks passed before any of them contacted me. 3 weeks of silence that felt both liberating and devastating. I spent those weeks reorganizing my life, establishing the foundation with Lorenzo, and learning to exist in a world where my children were strangers I'd once loved. The first call came from Sophia on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mom? Her voice was small, tentative. I started therapy. 3 sessions so far. Dr. Williams specializes in family trauma and financial abuse dynamics. She's helping me understand how I let myself become complicit. That's good, Sophia. I'm glad you're getting help. Can I see you? Just coffee, somewhere public if you're more comfortable. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to try. We met at a cafe near the Common 2 days later. She looked thinner, older somehow, carrying the weight of consequences in her posture. We talked for an hour, stilted, careful, painful. She didn't make excuses, didn't minimize what she'd done. Just apologized and asked what boundaries I needed. I need honesty, I told her. Complete honesty, even when it's hard. I need you to rebuild trust through actions, not words. And I need time, lots of time. I understand. However long it takes. She reached across the table, then stopped, uncertain if touch was allowed. I let her take my hand briefly. I love you, Mom. I know I didn't show it, but I do. I love you too. That's why this hurts so much. Felix was easier. He'd already proven himself by confessing before the confrontation, by standing with me in that conference room. We had dinner the following week, and slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding. He showed me messages he'd sent to Nathaniel, telling his brother exactly what he thought of the conspiracy. He showed me his therapy appointments, his efforts to make amends. I was a coward, he said over pasta I'd made, James's recipe. I saw wrong and did nothing. That makes me almost as guilty as them. Almost. But you chose differently when it mattered. That counts for something. Does it count enough? Eventually. Maybe. We'll see. I couldn't promise more than that. Trust, once shattered, doesn't reassemble perfectly. There are always cracks, always fragile places. Nathaniel and Scarlett were different. Silent for 6 weeks. Then Scarlett called from the hospital. She'd gone into premature labor at 34 weeks. The baby, a boy, was in NICU, tiny and struggling. Constance, please, he needs you. I need you. Her voice was stripped of all pretense, raw with fear. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but Theodore does. Please come meet your grandson. I went. How could I not? Whatever his parents had done, the baby was innocent. Theodore James, they'd named him after his grandfather, which felt like either genuine tribute or calculated manipulation. I chose to believe the former, because the alternative hurt too much. He was so small in his incubator, barely 4 pounds, hooked to machines that breathed for him. I placed my hand against the plastic, and he wrapped tiny fingers around mine through the opening. My heart cracked open again, this time with love instead of pain. He's beautiful, I whispered. Scarlett stood beside me looking wrecked. No makeup, hair unwashed, the polished influencer facade completely gone. I'm sorry. For everything. I am A terrible person, greedy and cruel, and I justified it all in my head. But feeling him fight to breathe, watching him struggle, it puts things in perspective. Does it? Or is this fear talking? Both, maybe. I don't know. I just know I can't lose him. And I can't let him grow up with a mother who'd do what I tried to do to you. I looked at her fully. She seemed genuine, but I'd believed false sincerity before. Then prove it. Not to me. To yourself. To him. Be someone he can be proud of. Will you be part of his life? Yes, on my terms, with my boundaries. I'll be his grandmother. But I won't be your ATM or your safety net. You and Nathaniel need to fix your own mess. We're selling the house, filed for bankruptcy last week, starting over completely. She laughed bitterly. Turns out pretending to be rich is expensive. It is. I could have told you that if you'd asked instead of schemed. Nathaniel appeared in the doorway, looking as broken as his wife. When he saw me, he stopped, uncertain. Mom. Nathaniel. We stood there, grandfather and son, with Theodore between us literally and metaphorically. The baby who might be our only bridge back to each other. Thank you for coming, he said finally. You didn't have to. No, I didn't. I came for him, not you. He nodded, accepting that. Fair enough. Can we talk? Not now, but sometime? Maybe. When you're ready to actually be honest about why you did what you did. Real reasons, not justifications. The real reason is I was drowning and too proud to ask for help. Too ashamed to admit I'd failed. Easier to blame you for having money than to face that I'd lost it through my own stupidity. His voice was flat, defeated. I wanted to be the successful son, the one who made you proud. Instead, I became the one who tried to destroy you. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. Maybe the most honest thing he'd said to himself. That's a start, I said quietly. Theodore came home 3 weeks later, healthy and thriving. I visited once a week, supervised at first, then gradually more freely as Nathaniel and Scarlett proved they were genuinely changing. They moved to a modest apartment, both working regular jobs, living within their means. The humility looked uncomfortable on them, but they were trying. The James Ashcroft Educational Foundation launched in September with 10 scholarship recipients. First-generation Americans, children of immigrants, brilliant kids who needed a chance just like I'd needed one 60 years ago. At the ceremony, I watched them receive their awards and felt James's presence like a hand on my shoulder. This was right. This was what our money should do. Create opportunity, not enable entitled mediocrity. Sophia brought a date to Thanksgiving dinner. A kind, modest accountant who treated her with genuine respect. Felix had started his own software company, funding it himself, refusing any help from me beyond advice. Nathaniel and Scarlett came with Theodore, now 4 months old and thriving. We sat around my table, this fractured family trying to be something new. It wasn't what it was. It would never be what it was. But it was something. Honest, at least. Built on truth instead of illusion. I want to say something, Sophia spoke up after dinner, her voice nervous. I know we don't do speeches, but I need to. Mom, what we did to you was unforgivable. We see that now. We're not asking you to forget or pretend it didn't happen. We're just grateful you're giving us any chance at all. I'm not doing it for you, I said honestly. I'm doing it because holding on to pure rage was poisoning me. Because Theodore deserves a grandmother. Because Felix and you, Sophia, are showing genuine change. Because life's too short to spend it at war with my own children. Even if we don't deserve it, Nathaniel added quietly. Especially because you don't deserve it. That's what grace is. Getting what you don't deserve. Your father taught me that. He'd be disappointed in what you did, but he'd also want me to leave room for redemption. We sat in complicated silence, this family rebuilt on different foundations. Not trust, we hadn't earned that back yet. But maybe honesty, maybe accountability, maybe the painful understanding that love isn't enough without respect and integrity. Theodore fussed in his carrier, and I picked him up, holding my grandson close. He smelled like baby soap and possibility, like second chances, like hope that maybe, just maybe, the next generation would learn from this disaster. Tell him about his grandfather, I said to Nathaniel. The real James, not the version you invented to justify your scheme. Tell him about the man who built beautiful things with integrity, who never compromised his principles for money, who loved his family but loved them enough to expect better from them. I will, Mom. I promise. I looked at my children, adults who'd betrayed me, who were trying to do better, who I loved despite everything. The mother in me wanted to forgive completely, to forget, to go back. But the woman I'd become through this nightmare knew better. Some betrayals leave scars, some families break and never fully heal. But maybe with enough time and genuine change, we could build something new from the ruins. Not what we were, but something honest, something real. I held Theodore and felt his heartbeat against mine. 2 generations bridged by love and complicated by history. This was my legacy now. Not just money or property, but the harder work of teaching through consequences, of demanding better, of showing that strength sometimes means walking away, and grace sometimes means walking back. But wisdom is knowing the difference. Let's eat pie, I said finally. James's favorite, pumpkin with real whipped cream. And we did. This broken, rebuilding family, sharing dessert and careful conversation, taking first steps on a very long road back to something that might eventually resemble trust. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. And after everything, honesty was what mattered most.